moving on now, we are going to have on Jesse Bugger, the head coach at Triad, as our next segment here, and super excited to get into it with him. So let's get into that.
Well, guys, we are lucky enough here to have another really, really impressive high school coach. Somebody who's done it for a long time, had a ton of success, does it the right way. Jesse Bugger from Triad High School, head coach since 2008, and is from the St. Louis Metro East area. He played high school baseball at Edwardsville. Went to Southwest Missouri State for 2 years before transferring back home to SIU Edwardsville. Southwest Missouri State is now Missouri State.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm old, so it had a different name.
well,
No.
that wasn't the reason I threw it out there. I wanted to make sure everybody knew what I was talking about. And Coach, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just get right in there. One of the biggest reasons we want to have you on is first off, you've done a great job at Triad. You guys are competing for a state title at the 3A level seemingly every single year. But you're from that Triad Edwardsville area. You know, what was your childhood like growing up in Edwardsville? As far as just kind of maybe leading you to what you're doing today. But you played at Edwardsville and played for Tom Pyle. Just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I played for Tom Pyle, graduated in '94. Edwardsville's a little bit different place than it is now. Probably a little bit more similar to the way Triad is now as far as size. Definitely not I mean, that place is big now. There's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff going on in town. Um, but yeah, I was between the first state championship and the second one when I played, so there was a lot of tradition already in place. Coach Pyle is an interesting character and definitely can add to your enthusiasm for it. But I mean, Evertsville baseball has always been a big deal. It was certainly a big deal when I was in school, and it's something you really wanted to be a part of if you played baseball. So I was fortunate to play there, and then I got as far as the coaching stuff goes. I got to play for Coach Pyle, and then I went and played for Coach Gutton, and then I ended up playing for Bo Collins. So I got to see three different Hall of Famers do it different ways, and you kind of pick and choose what you like, what you don't like, and then you kind of make it your own after a little bit. But
Exactly. It's funny you mentioned Coach Gutton because that was the first time I really had put a connection with you. I had coached for Tim Bunton, who was down under Coach Gutton for a little bit at
yeah, he
Southwest
was
Missouri
the
State.
grad assistant when I was there, I believe.
And he mentioned that you guys did cross paths. And a lot of his philosophy and what he does in the game, I have to believe came from Coach Gutton. He had a tremendous amount of respect for him and coached for him for a while. So, I feel like I've kind of had that just assimilate down on through me, or I don't know the right word to put there, but just kind of old school traditional baseball guy. And Tim was very much the same way. And one thing I've really noticed with Triad over the years is you kind of know what you're going to get when you go and see Triad, at least from my perspective. Like, you guys are going to play the game the right way. You're going to compete. You're going to be a tough out. And it seemed to kind of be that way every year in the playoffs. You guys seem to be making a run, making it to state back in 2018. Doesn't really matter, the names on the roster. You guys are going to go about your business. So am I onto something there? Is that something you would agree with? Like, what are some
Well, I
things you
hope
try to
so. I
do?
mean, I think it probably does matter the names just a little bit. We we had some downtimes, and high school, public school especially, is stud poker. So you're playing with the cards that you're dealt, and we've been fortunate that a lot of times we do have pretty good cards to put out there. Um, we work really hard at it. We spend a lot of time out there getting ready, and we try to play as difficult a schedule as we possibly put together so that when we get towards the end of the year, we call it plaque season. When you get the chances to win some plaques, you've hopefully seen as much as possible about what you might run up against in those elimination type games.
You guys got turf on your infield.
We
Has
put
that
turf in 2020. That's
so?
a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's almost understated how big of a deal it can be, especially for a Southern Illinois school who may pop decent weather days here and there in February, March, whenever you actually can get outside or be with your team. Typically, let's just say March 1st. So how have you utilized it? How has it been, a huge benefit?
I think those of us that have turf Especially at the beginning of the season, you kind of hit the ground running a little bit faster than guys that don't. Having not had it before, you got to wait for frost. You got to wait for your field to get in shape to where you can really get on the field. I know, you're dealing with tarps and rain, and right now, I mean, anytime it's decent, you can go get on the field. So those first 2 weeks before we get into the kickoff, early in the year, we've been on the field a lot. Like last year, I think we were on the field every day before we played a game, and then we talked to some of our opponents, and they're like, "We haven't been outside yet." Um, so I mean, that's a huge advantage. And then just being able to play whenever it's not raining. We were fighting tarps and fighting getting fields ready, and it just makes life a whole lot easier down here at Midwest playing baseball.
No, and I know it's been it seems like it's been an effort from a lot of high schools around the state to try to get turf on at least infields. Because I will say, like to your point, especially up in the northern part of the state, the first games these guys are playing is the first times they're on a field. And let alone, hitter versus pitcher and seeing, a live arm coming at you. But to me, it's the ground balls. It's the way the fields play. Early on in the year, they're so soft. You don't know what you're going to get. So evaluating a player isn't even really fair at that stage. So when we are
Right.
lucky enough to come down to the Kickoff Classic and almost all the venues are turf and you're actually seeing baseball the way it's supposed to be played, it's it's just nice to see that versus like, man, for the first couple weeks of the season up here, there's
Yeah,
you can only
it's got
put
to
so
be
much
rough.
stock into it.
Right.
Exactly.
And then
Um,
we get out there, we might have, even if it's like 35 or 30, we're going to go out and take fungos, and, we're going to work defense. We might keep the pitchers inside and take care of them a little bit. They're a little bit soft, but we're going to get our work in one way or another, and
Uh,
make sure that we are ready to go. So we always kind of try to work backwards from the kickoff classic and make sure that we've at least got some semblance of a team defense put in by then, and just try to get a billion reps by the time you get into that first game.
yeah, well, that's awesome to hear, and definitely a luxury. Depending on where you are in the state, I think it does make a big difference in baseball. And I know it's not about how fast you start because it's all about getting your team to be ready to go in May and playoff time, but definitely a nice advantage there. And
Yeah, it's not about how fast you start, but if you
yep.
can start a little bit higher, then maybe you can get a little bit further along by the end, instead of, just, that month can make a big difference of really being on the field.
I like that statement because you're kind of talking about the floor of your team. And if your team starts at a higher floor, they can it's maybe easier to get to
Maybe
that
we can
higher
push a
ceiling.
little bit further at the end,
Yeah.
yeah. Make one more
Okay.
play.
Well, I want to open it up to our guys. We've got Tyler Deffelball with us. We got Peter Hammett. We've got Gavin Smith. They are instrumental to everything we do here in the state, whether it's the scouting, whether it's the podcast, whether it's events. And I know there may be some questions floating around. And Gavin, you had put together a bunch of good ones.
yeah, Coach. I think one thing that we, as a staff, like to know about with these high school teams is some of these underclassmen that maybe we don't have a ton on, or we don't have a ton of information about, we haven't seen before. So I guess my question for you is, who are some underclassmen on your team this year that might be you know, have a big impact on your team?
Well, we like our freshman class a lot, but I don't know that any of them are really going to be ready to impact this spring. Our 27s, we've got quite a few guys that are going to do something, that are going to contribute, especially probably at this point on the mound, and one or two of them uh, in the lineup. But we are older, which makes life a little bit easier. Um, but, well, my nephew, he can swing it a little bit, Augie, and then Jackson Vaughn really swings it nice. And then Clucker came out of nowhere last year and pitched more innings than anybody else, which I would not have guessed that I would have used a freshman at all on the mound last year with some of the guys that we had, but some of the circumstances led to we ended up going a little bit deeper, and he just kept succeeding. Um,
And that's
those three
Nathan
for sure.
Clucker.
Nathan Clucker,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, he did really well. He's a little bit different, kind of a little bit of a slinger, but he's a strike thrower. He gets lost. It's got a lot of movement. Velo's starting to jump a little bit. It's a pretty good sized kid. Um, and then everybody kind of knows already. The site kids have moved over here. They're all moved in and registered for classes and getting ready to move in. So Keegan obviously played varsity baseball last year at a big school, and he can swing it. And I know you guys have all seen him in the summers, and calls. He's a nice player.
No, absolutely. Big left-handed juice there too down the road. How huge is that Keegan is coming in to the district? Because I know you lost a quality catcher last year.
Well, we do have Landon Loomis is going to be a senior. I think
Okay.
he's committed to Minnesota State. He had a great summer, and he really swung it well for us last year. But we played him out of position because we had Carter, and Carter Vanderbilt was really strong behind the plate, and he's at Kaskaskia now.
Yeah.
So we've got some options that gives us some depth behind the plate, and probably some depth at first base with that, which is a big deal because I have a tendency to kind of grind our catchers into the ground because I don't like seeing balls go to the backstop. And
Yeah.
it's really hard not to write that guy's name that steals those strikes for you, that makes those blocks. So
Well,
so
and
this gives us a chance not to do that.
you need your catcher to be a grinder. they
Right.
they need to be the biggest grinder on your team. They got to do all the dirty work. They got to stay the latest. They got to catch all the arms. Yeah, no, that's a fair want from a coach. You mentioned your nephew, Augie,
Augie.
but I wanted to bring up your son. You know, it's something that Coach Funkhauser's done over at Edwardsville. He's had his boys come through the program. Hayden is
Hayden
now
is a
committed
senior.
to Kaskaskia. How was
Yep.
that process being? It's very unique to me being a high school coach, having your son come up. What kind of difficulties did you face from a dad coach, son relationship? How did you handle it?
Well, probably not as well as I could have at times. I mean, I'm sure. Um, we spent a lot of time together at the field, and always have. And he grew up around the program. We look back at some of the old championship pictures and stuff, and there's this little kid hanging around all of them. So he's grown up in the dugout, which I think makes it easy and makes it tough at times because he's the kind of guy at this point where you don't have to yell at him, but you give him a look that he's seen you give 1,000 other players, and he knows you're not pleased with what's going on here. So I think there's an added amount of pressure to it to some extent, but I'm really kind of hoping, with the commitment being done, being senior year, that he can relax a little bit and play more like he's played in the summer times, to be honest with you, where, dad's not the boss. Dad's just the guy throwing BP before the game when we go play.
Yeah.
So, and I think that will happen. He puts in an extraordinary amount of work. Obviously, with me being the coach, you don't really get. I mean, he wants to put in all the work, but you wouldn't get away with not putting your work in and being ready to go. So, and all our guys right now, this group of 25s is pretty special as far as their work ethic. They're in the weight room, they're in the cages, they're with their instructors. They're really getting ready.
Well, and it's a great transition because I want to ask, like, how do you feel about this year's club? What are you excited about with the club? We just kind of mentioned we emailed the preseason questionnaires out. We're starting to get some responses in. It's early. There's still plenty of time, but we love looking at it. We love starting to get our wheels spinning about the spring. But yeah, what do you like? What do you got going?
Well, I think we have a unique amount of depth on the mound for us. We are 3A, so it's sometimes you are top heavy with your talent, but we have, I think, more arms than what we've had in quite some time. We've had some top end guys, and we've got the capability to have that right now with Winslow, the Oklahoma State commit, and Sawyer Bronson's a senior who maybe he's not 6'6", but a guy gets outs and he's very competitive. Burn Reader is going to be strong on the mound, and then the addition of Nolan Keller coming back to Triad should really help. And then Clucker led the team in the innings last year. And then we saw some good stuff out of Grayson Yank towards the end of the year, kind of, not nines guys, but mid-80s guys with the ability to pump strikes with multiple pitches. So that's really a big deal when you're playing the schedule that we play and you're playing in the conference that we play where it's going to be very competitive. Well, you're going to face guys where it's going to be tough to score. You can't give up a lot of runs.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a plethora of arms there.
Yeah, and there's probably a couple more on the outskirts, but right now maybe they won't be on the outskirts when we get to March.
Are there some teams down in that area, coaches, teams, places you go that you really enjoy the competition every year? You know what you're going to get out of Highland or Muscuda, or are there
Yeah,
certain
I don't know if I'd
programs?
say I enjoy it all that much, but yeah, our conference is a grind.
Yeah,
You know what you're going to get with Highland. Um, one way or another, you're going to play a close game, and you're going to be one miscue on a button D from losing. Um, they're going to take advantage of anything that you let them take advantage of. And there's no secret to beating them. You need to get about a 4-run lead and get the leadoff hitter off base every game, but it just doesn't always work out that way. And then, Mosquito lately's had arms with Musso, and the Klein kid's looking like he's going to be pretty tough to deal with for a couple of years. So, it's a good conference. So,
No,
and
it
then
is.
our non-conference schedule, I'm an idiot. I mean, I try to light it up. So we're gonna play, Funky and O'Fallon, and we're gonna go to Kentucky. And then when Tim's putting out the kickoff schedule, he's like, "Who do you want?" I'm like, "Give us the best 3As that are coming down. We'll see where we're at." And some years we play some 4As depending on who's coming down. We play a lot of 4As on our schedule. We only play one or two 2A schools and 1A schools. I don't think we play any, but like they're Columbia, Effingham, St. Anthony.
And even
They're
those,
guys,
you're probably going to get their best arm. Columbia's
right?
going
Because
to have
they're out
some
of conference
dudes.
play
Yeah.
by the time we're playing them, and we're still probably hanging in there. So that's okay.
Yep.
We're gonna go over and play Vianney and Jackson early this year and Chatham. We'll find out who we are before we get to the end.
Absolutely. And either way, it'll kind of expose parts of your team that you need to work on throughout the year. I think that's always the beauty of it too. The
Yeah,
good
you got to
teams,
flip
they
those rocks
expose.
over and see what's up.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I want to open this back up to Tyler or Peter or anybody else that may have a question here.
Hey coach, I'll hop in here. You kind of talked a little bit about, being in your area, you have to play the hand you're dealt, and with the talent that comes through your program. Is there any sort of collaboration with you, and maybe it's, the local youth leagues there or the travel organizations in the area, with how you want some of those younger guys to develop as they come up through your program?
Yes and no. I mean, I coach the seventh grade team too,
Okay.
just so they kind of get used to practicing 5, 6 days a week and playing every day. But as far as how guys play or where they play, I mean, we've had a lot of success with guys that played for Extreme. We've had a lot of Gators over the years and GBA guys, and most people in the clubs that they're playing, and those are the two big ones probably, but we've had others in the past. Most people are doing a pretty good job of working on skill development with their guys. And we kind of keep tabs on everybody that way. We've got pitchers going to MPL with Huber. We've got guys going and seeing our guy at Extreme. We don't have anything too formal instruction wise right now because of the rules and regulations of it. But we are definitely keeping tabs on everybody. We've got hitters going to Cody Massey. We've got hitters going to Jake Depew. We've got them all over the place, but we think they're learning pretty good stuff for the most part. And to be honest with you, when I first got into it, I wanted to control more of that. But I think sometimes you get a lot of confirmation bias that way when you start looking at certain players and you kind of pigeonhole them a little bit. And we had one or two leave for the summer months, come back and think, that guy's pretty good, and I didn't know that he was when before. So it's kind of good for him to some extent to get away from us just a little bit, as long as it's not totally contrary to what we're trying to do, which there are one or two of those out there. But, we play, I don't know if it's boring. I don't know. We're going to try to hit, so we're not going to play a ton of small ball. We might move some runners if we've got some guys that can run, but we want to spend all our time on the field preparing to hit as much as humanly possible. So we take tons of BP. So as long as guys are swinging in the offseason and, chasing the right things, chasing it, maybe for some guys it's bad speed, for other guys it's more barrel. Exit velos are nice because they get bored in the cage if they don't have them. But I do think they're probably a little bit dependent on that. And I feel bad for them a little bit sometimes because you watch these guys take line drive rounds and they're like, oh man, I topped out at 90 that round. Like I wouldn't even have cared in the 90s. I'd have been hitting the cage, and if it was full of line drives, then that's a good round. But if they don't set a PR, everybody's frustrated at the end of a round.
That's an incredible point because the world is changing to that. And I mean, I don't know if you want to say a problem, but we highlight that, we highlight guys that are strong and have exit velocities, but I love to hear you talk about it and talk about looking for line drive rounds. Cause to me, it's all about what kind of hitter you are. You know, if you're
Sure.
if you're a guy that should not be lifting the baseball, then you need to stay on a line. And whether you're peaking at 89 or 99, it shouldn't matter as long as every swing is close to your peak.
Right. I
Um,
mean, I love average exit velocity. You know, a guy
yes,
stays around 90 for a whole round. Awesome. You know, I don't
yes,
really, but if you're 105, one ball, and then the rest of the round's like 68 side spin, then we're not really looking for that much.
that is
But
exactly my same feeling. And how you get to your bat speed, how much effort you take in to get to it, can you repeat? But 100%. And knowing who you are as a baseball player and like who you are as a hitter, because they all come in different shapes and sizes, and what makes a great hitter here, like maybe somebody's just amazing at using the other, going to the opposite field, and some guys all turn and burn, but if you miss a fastball in, he's not missing it,
well,
and
that's
it's
a,
going a long
you know,
way.
and sometimes when you're writing your BP on field groups, you got to watch who you're pairing people up with a little bit because you can stick a Hayden Burner in the cage and watch him put on a light show. And then, the guy after him looks at it and goes, man, I'd like to do that, but that's not that guy. Maybe he needs to be capped to get, oppo gap to the line drives all over the place, not necessarily taking out trees and, right center field. So,
Yep. Or
but
if they're
we
trying to be like Hayden Burnrooter and they're lifting everything, they're just flying out to shallow right field. Yeah.
right. We've got a lot of guys, I think, this time that really kind of know who they are. And
Right.
we've got some guys that can really swing it. I think the interesting thing for me when constructing this lineup, or at least way too early a lineup, is we're left-handed in a weird sort of way. And I don't know that I've really ever had like 6, 7 left-handed hitters in a lineup at the same time. This hasn't really worked out that way in the last 20 years, but
Yeah.
it's interesting with some of the people you could possibly run into. Like a Cam Appenzeller might be a real issue.
Yeah, I
It could
think
be anyway, but when you got 6, 7 guys in there,
over the course of the season, these 6 to 7 left-handed bats will play out in your favor versus that time when you're having to face
sure,
Arizona. Because might not matter if they're
it
lefty
might
or
not even
righty.
happen. It might not matter if you're right-handed or not. Yeah.
Exactly. But
So,
I was thinking about it though when you said that Sipe was transferring in because he's a very very intriguing left-handed bat and just how nice that is to add a left-handed bat at any time. But it sounds like you've got a ton of them. It sounds like your
Deaver,
boy's going to be one of the ones to mix it up and go
yeah,
right.
he's one of the 2 or 3. Him and Keller are 2 right-handed guys that think of right away. But like Gabe
I like
Deaver's
the
a
Deaver
left-hand
swing.
hitter.
Yeah.
Loomis is a left-hand hitter. Deegan's a left-hand hitter. So there's quite a few. Bernie.
We'll
You
have
know,
to talk after the year to see how you liked it. If you liked having
well,
all
I think
those
it's going to be
lefties
just
in that
fine for
too.
the most part. But well,
Well, that's good stuff there. We've got a couple questions written down. So there was one here I liked, and Peter, it was your first question on the board. I'm curious about that because we're not perfect. We miss guys all the time, whether it's Central Illinois, Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois. But yeah,
Yeah, hey coach, thanks for coming on. I was
yeah,
just
no problem.
wondering if there's any, schools down in Southern Illinois that are overlooked, whether it be by us or just in general, like a school that you really respect, the way they go about their business, that you think they're talented, but maybe they don't get, the light shined on them the way that they should.
and you can say
Uh,
Triad as well.
Yeah, you can say
Yeah,
yourself. That's totally fine.
we I don't know. We get enough attention probably for the most part, but like last year, we fell off a little bit, and I was definitely all over them about their PBR ranking and getting way too excited about who they think they are versus who we currently are. But when we do well, people know about it, and we really appreciate the coverage. It's been great the last few years, way more than 20 years ago. It was kind of like Southern Illinois was a little bit of an afterthought, but it's always been pretty good baseball.
and
There
you are spot
are
on there. Like, and that is something we as a staff we know, and it's something that we are going to take a ton of pride in, and we have the last couple years because there is a ton of good baseball down there, like you said, and it needs to be a priority. So,
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys really trying hard. Like a lot of coaches doing a really good job um, making life a lot more difficult. I think when I first took over, I mean, I don't. I think you could outcoach people sometimes, like or out prepare, or just do more. Even if you were doing something wrong, you were doing more of it wrong, so you were better off when you ran up against those people. But I think there's a whole lot of people that are trying really hard, going to clinics or getting more baseball guys into their staffs and programs, and you know, there's a whole lot of competition to do really well. I mean, Highland gets plenty of attention, but they're always tough to prepare for. Hawk's always got his guys ready to go to play his style, which is unique to some extent. You know how you prepare against them. And Don Eddy at Muscuda does that to some extent too. Now they're playing a little more small ball with some athletes, and they can swing it at times too. Ebb and flow, just like all of us. You have more hitters some years than others, but they've got arms. But there's a lot of good teams down here. We try to see them all. Like we go across the river quite a bit too, and play the Viannis and CBCs of the world, and kind of find out who we are. And we head to Kentucky for a trip and play McCracken and a couple of those teams. But as far as down here, I think you guys are covering them pretty good. I mean, there's not too many guys really slipping through the cracks that, you know, I'll be honest, like if we're playing somebody out of the area, one of the first things I do is find their roster and hop on PBR and see if I can find some video of whatever pitcher we're going to face or whatever. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, but at least you know what you're up against a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you can find something about most teams that you're going to play in your coverage at some point.
That's great to hear. That's hopefully just another added benefit of what we do is the information is out there for anybody to, find it. Obviously, we want college coaches to be able to find it extremely easily, but for you guys to be able to do a little advanced scouting, get an idea of who you're facing, what the arm's going to be. Well,
yeah, we don't get a chance to do that very often, like in person. We try to do it during the postseason, and we send our underclass coaches all over the state trying to look at possible opponents and possible pitching matchups. But the video does make life a lot easier to at least have an idea of where a guy tops out at velo wise. We do a ton of on-field BP of throwing traditional stuff, but we do a ton of machine stuff and try to match stuff to some extent for people that we're preparing for. It's one of the only ways. We're too old to show the kids any velo, so you gotta turn the machine on a little bit.
Maybe do it for a couple hitters, but then you're gonna have to
you want to go home and cry. But
well, Gavin, Peter, Tyler, do you guys have anything else you want to ask Coach here?
I think I'm good personally. He answered a lot of my questions that I had about the team and stuff, so I'm personally good. But Pete, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna does anyone have any more about high school stuff? Because if not, I was just gonna ask how you got into coaching in general, just like a basic question. But I always like to know, how you got into it. Was there anyone that kind of led you into it? Anyone you try and model after? I know Tom Pyle obviously you mentioned him, but
man, I've been ate up with baseball for a long time. So like when I started playing in high school and you start looking at things realistically, as much as it's hard to do for a kid, you start thinking about how am I going to stay involved with baseball, because I really don't know if there's anything I want to do without it. So, between Coach Pyle and Coach Butler, and Coach Waldo, those guys were big influences in high school. And then obviously going to college to play and seeing some of that stuff, I learned a lot. I played a ton my freshman year at Southwest Missouri, but it didn't work out so well my sophomore year. So I actually got to stand around a little bit more. I don't know if I would have considered it a benefit at that point, but you learn a little bit more standing over on the sideline sometimes than worrying about your 4 at-bats and the 2 or 3 count balls you might get during a game when you're on the field. So I was starting to get more curious about the moves that were being made and why they were being made, and the pitch calling and kind of the game within the game type stuff, and learned a lot. And then transferred home, and we had a couple really great years. SIUE was Division II at that point. We went to World Series, and then and I had known Coach Collins for a long time. Bo had me stay on after I got done playing, and I helped out for a year before I ended up getting my job over here at Triad. But, we would talk through a lot of scenarios and situations in the clubhouse and why he did what he did. And, a lot of times he wasn't always the guy that would explain the moves that he was making during the games. But when we sit in the clubhouse after the game and talk about it, you really understood that there's a lot more to making a move than just a gut feeling a lot of times, as far as what you should be doing, when you should be doing it. So if there's anybody that probably mentored me as far as decision making and stuff, it's probably Bo. really in the long run. And then you do see, you know, stuff you like, stuff you don't like. Well, like my refusal, my staff gets on me at times, but my refusal to bunt at times is probably because I grew up bunting, you know, playing for Coach Pyle all the time. So I probably have to get a little less stubborn with that and move a runner here now and then. But I always want to put as much faith as I can in my hitters because we've prepared them as much as we can. So, but there are probably times where it's a good idea to go ahead and do that.
I think your guys are probably cool with it.
Well, and that's
Not getting the
they
bugs.
are,
Yeah.
you know. But you could, in some regards, you could probably take a little pressure off them by moving a runner here and there and make their life a little bit easier too.
True. Just ground ball up the middle is all we need here. We got a guy on
just
third with
move
one
that
out.
guy.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Well, no, this is outstanding, Coach, and I'm a big fan of you and what you've done down there at that program and the field and everything. So just another really, really quality coach coming out of Southern Illinois and who does it right in the state, and that's why you're here, and that's why we wanted to have you on, and really appreciate your time, and we will be down there to see you this spring, I'm sure.
well, I appreciate it. I would be remiss if I didn't say how much support that we actually get in the community and my athletic director in particular in the school as far as the field and understanding our needs and really trying to give us everything that we could possibly need to try and be successful. So I missed, you know, Kenny Deathridge is awesome as far as setting things up for us, and he got the whole turf project basically. Nobody likes to say no to Kenny, so he worked hard enough on the project long enough that we ended up with a turf infield and a really great place to play high school baseball. So
That is a beautiful facility, and we just went through talking about some of our favorite high school venues in the state. And one of my, didn't make our top 4, but one of my picks was Triad because it is a beautiful place to watch a game and scout, and the infield there is beautiful, and it's just another great. Like, there's so many good parks down there in Southern Illinois, all with
getting
like
better all the
different,
time.
yeah, like different vibes to them. It's a really, really unique spot, and kudos to you guys and to Kenny Deathridge, it sounds like.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Coach.
No
Thank
problem.
you,
You
Coach.
guys have a good one.
Appreciate it.
All right, you too.
All right, well, appreciate Coach Bugger coming on to the podcast this week. Next week is Christmas, so we are not going to have a new podcast, but we will have some posts coming out with some kind of directing you back to some old interviews, or not old, but interviews that we've done with coaches on the bullpen so far. So be sure to check those out. Check out our YouTube during the week if you're looking for something to listen to, but we'll still have some stuff coming out to kind of get you to YouTube and listen to some interviews that maybe you missed. And then also the week after Christmas, we pre-recorded an episode with Dominic Vagley today. He was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year. He is a right-handed pitcher at Kansas from Columbia. So super excited for that one to come out. So that will come out the week after Christmas. So appreciate him coming on as well. And had an awesome conversation with him. A lot of good insight for high school kids to dig into and to try and implement themselves. So,
And while you're waiting for something to do over Christmas, check out our top 10 stories from 2025. They'll be floating out all the way up until New Year's.
absolutely. Yeah.
I
we actually
also-
have some. Go ahead.
I just want to say shout out to all of our listeners, all the people who subscribe to us on YouTube, everybody who listens on Spotify, Apple. Just hope everybody who listens has a Merry Christmas.
Appreciate both those guys coming on today, and we'll see you next time.